St. Andrews has brought me nearer to Jesus and continues to in new ways every day.
We are invited into following Jesus on the way of life.
I feel like I'm at home when I'm here, and my relationship with the Lord has just begun. I didn't have one until I came here, and I'm so thankful.
I really see the heart of Jesus in this community, and it's just like one beautiful, multi-generational family.
That's what the entire Bible is about. Receiving the goodness of God and His mercy and grace and forgiveness, and that being the catalyst and the power to step on the journey of following Him, following Jesus.
God put that in us, a natural desire to serve Him, serve others, and that's what we're doing here.
Jesus describes the kingdom of God as a great feast. As followers of Christ, not only do we have a seat at the banquet table, but God also invites us to put on an apron and get on in the kitchen to help prepare the meal. Every day we see examples of this with the wonderful people who serve our community. So I sat down with 3 restaurant owners to find out what it means to them to serve a feast to their neighborhood. I'm Chap Clark, and this is The Chef's Table. All right, now let's talk about the food. Is there one pizza? Is there one pasta? Bread? What is it that you would say is this marks who we are?
Well, years ago, while I was dating my wife, Catherine, we ate at a restaurant and they had these little bread balls and they were tossed in oregano and garlic. We'd both have them because we were going to end up with garlic breath. And we fell in love with those little things. When we opened here, we renamed them garlic knots, and they're pieces of pizza dough tied in a knot, tossed up in olive oil and oregano. We've been giving them away, literally, ever since. We have probably made more of those and given them more away to kids that come to the pizza bakery for lunch from Harbor.
Oh, that's great.
And they want a slice of pizza and a garlic knot.
Oh, fantastic. Paul, what is this? Thank you. Oh my goodness, look at that.
So these are the signature orange ricotta hotcakes topped with fresh berries. And I love Mexican food, so we have huevos rancheros on the menu.
That's what I always get for breakfast.
Yeah, so these are 2 of my favorite dishes. I mean, I can't think of one that's not my favorite, but...
Are you the head chef, kind of, as well?
Yeah.
So you created the dishes here.
I have, but there's been others in the past that have brought their talents to the table, so I don't want to steal their light.
Oh, you've ruined me, by the way. I want to talk to you, but I really want to eat your pancakes. I mean,
I came across this recipe that was recommended to me. This is what we call our Bungalow Pumpkin Pot Pie. And so she actually cooked the pumpkin, and then we add kind of a mix of chicken and onions and sauce and some cheese, and it's kind of a piccata sauce. I had most of my staff try it because before I put anything on the menu, I've got to have the support of my staff, right? Yeah. They've got to like it, and if they don't like it, they're not going to sell it, right? So far, it's been pretty unanimous. Everybody likes it, and they like the presentation. I think it'll really surprise you. At least it did us.
what a unique flavor. You can taste the chicken, but it's got that a pumpkin chicken, I guess is the best way to describe it. Is this your first year serving it?
First time ever, yeah. In fact, you're the first person besides the staff to have it, so.
Oh, man. You know, well, I'm honored.
I mean, yeah.
Great to be with you today. We're continuing our series on entering into the chef's table, the great wedding feast of the King from Matthew 22. And how we do that is we're thinking about, do we go right to the table or do we head into the kitchen with the King himself? And we create the meal for the chef's table, that great banquet of the ages. And so as we continue this series, I had a thought. I kind of was watching a new show that's not a new show, it's an old show, and it's National Geographic. That just tells you how far down the list of preferred shows I've been watching. But it's called The Right Stuff. I don't know how many of you have actually seen The Right Stuff. Many of you may remember. It comes from a book from 1979 about those first 7 astronauts, the Mercury astronauts, to put our first men in space. And so the book, The Right Stuff, was a national bestseller, of course. Then they made a great movie in 1983 about these 7 astronauts and their families, and it got 96 on Rotten Tomatoes, if you want to see that. But then for some reason, National Geographic and Disney Plus decided, let's make a kind of a docu-series about this. Let's make our own movie of the right stuff that is not, quite 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. But the idea of the right stuff, that these 7 guys had the right stuff. In other words, they had all of the ingredients that they needed. They had all of the skills and resources that they needed to be able to represent our nation in this great space race of the late 50s and early 60s. They were called the members of the right stuff. When I think about the right stuff, I think about the 3 restaurants we've been looking at in the chef's table. Jim at the Bungalow, John at the Pizza Bakery, and then Paul at Hotcakes. And all 3 of them, when you start to dig in, as you've seen through these 3 different scenes that we've given you about these 3 restaurants, what you've seen is they clearly have the right stuff. They've been there for a long time. They have the right staff. They're all kind of stacking hands on what does it mean for us to run this particular restaurant that we want to give to our community. They're doing it right, and they're doing well. They made it through the pandemic, and I really encourage all of us to go and support them. But mostly, they just had something about them. Not just these 3 owners, but their chefs, all the people that work with and for them, and their people that go and visit these restaurants. They feel it, they experience it, they have this incredible time. And as you saw, they're so proud of what they produce. All 3 of those places where we went, and they brought out the things that they are just so proud of. The right stuff. Now that got me to thinking as we consider, what does it mean for us as followers of Christ to, as we get into deeper relationship with Jesus, that we allow ourselves to bypass the glory of the blessing of the feast because the King is summoning us. As he sees you walking into that banquet hall, ready for the great feast of the ages, Matthew 22, ready to enjoy the blessings that God has for us. And he looks you right in the eyes, I said a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, you, who me, Lord? Yeah, you, come on, you're part of this team. Come on, you have the right stuff. But do we? Now, in the last few weeks, all of the tumult going around, all of the emotions and things that are happening around us, more than perhaps any time in our history, do we need men and women, boys and girls that love Jesus and have the right stuff for his mission. And that's why we're talking about this, because right now we need to be with him in order to prepare that feast that people are so longing for. And so we go to our scripture. It's Romans chapter 12. It's that great passage that transitions out of those first 11 chapters of describing how God decided to rescue us, how he built his banquet hall, and how he's bringing his kingdom to the earth. And Romans 12 begins the process of how we enter that kitchen to prepare the feast for all those who long for what God has for them. Romans 12, verses 1 to 11. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, but cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. Yep, thanks be to God. 2 weeks ago, we talked about 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and in that passage talks about, yes, gifts, but mostly it talks about we are the gift and we all need each other. Sounds familiar to this passage, doesn't it? A lot of people kind of put 1 Corinthians 12 and Romans 12 together, but Paul's talking about something a little different here. He's talking about actually, yes, we need each other. So 1 Corinthians 12 is going into the kitchen of the king, but Romans 12 is much more about what do we do once we're in there? Who are we? Do we have the right stuff to be able to do what God's calling us to do, especially in this crazy world? See, like the astronauts, like the owners, do we have that right stuff to make the right kind of feast, to bring healing and hope to a world that is so hungry for it? Where are the men and women and the boys and girls who are going to stand up for love and kindness and hope? Especially now, when we're more divided than ever. What's it going to take for us to actually be servants of the King? Verse 11 of Romans 12. And doing everything that we do with diligence, do we have the right stuff to pull it off? Well, here's what you need to know. God thinks so. God has endowed you, as you love him and trust him, with all the giftedness and all the resources you need to be able to participate in his work and ministry of reconciliation, of healing and hope. You and I have it. So let's see what's going on in that kitchen. Well, first, I want you to notice something here in Romans 12. And that's true of our 3 restaurants. As we went inside and took some video and pictures of how everybody's working, whether they were someone who was relatively new there that just had a job that others would call menial, or people that were more important to the task of the mission. In reality, every single person was important to the task of the mission. There is no competition in these kitchens. None. No competition. Nobody had to compare themselves with anybody else. Now, that's important for us to remember that in the King's kitchen, you and I are not in competition with each other. You are not having to compare yourself to our staff or any staff, to someone who's really good at something that you think is more important than what you could actually bring to that kitchen and to the table of the King. Every single one of us is essential, and therefore we don't have to compete with each other. It's like churches. Churches is the one kind of institution where there is no such thing as competition, because we all serve the same God. We're all actually in the same kitchen, serving the same meal. And that meal is the meal that brings hope and healing and reconciliation. Maybe you don't even know this, but St. Andrew's has a kitchen. I mean, it's a great kitchen. And at the very center of it is a guy named Vinny Solers. And I've become friends with Vinny over the last few years, and this guy's at the center. Whether he's always there or not doesn't matter. He's kind of the key guy with our kitchen. And the great thing about this kitchen, whether we're serving meals for Northeast of the Well on Monday nights, or when the guys from Teen Challenge come, or on Wednesday night together, when a bunch of us gather at our church, when we do something special like the Fall Festival a few weeks ago, we got these people in the St. Andrew's kitchen where there is no competition. Vinny, I've talked to him about this. What's it like to be in our kitchen as you prepare for all these different things, whether it's you or others that are doing this? Tell me about what goes on. And he says, well, I can't tell you about what goes on without telling you about the people. Well, who are some of the people that are kind of important in making our kitchen run and produce all the great things we do? And he goes, well, here's kind of a small list for you. And so he went to send me this list. And this list just kind of Aline, Dottie, Lisa, Mark, Don, Julie, Judy, Art and Dorothy, Lynette, Jill, Cindy, Martin Taylor, Ken Turner. And he kind of ran out of breath. First he sent it to me, and then I asked him, are these the ones? And he listed off, and he said, and there's a lot more. I need to give you more. I said, well, what if I leave someone out? He goes, you will leave somebody out because there's so many. We have so many people that are committed to the St. Andrew's Kitchens. Isn't that fantastic? They come and they serve, and they do a wide variety of things. In fact, when I talked to Cindy just a couple of weeks ago, she's walking in for the Fall Festival, and I happen to be sitting out there with Scott Cody. We get talking, she goes, I made your branches for the table when you did that first branches thing. I'm the one that put the branches on the table. With great pride, Cindy tells me of her role in making sure that that table for our branches, our first event where hundreds went through it, had those centerpieces that she put together. That's what happens in the King's Kitchen and the chef's table, is that there's no competition. Everybody serves, everybody's part of it, and everybody's excited. And Vinny told me it's because we're a family. We just come together for the mission to create this incredible feast. That leads us to the second thing that happens to get ready for the chef's table, is in the chef's kitchen, is there's no bystanders in the King's Kitchen. There's no bystanders. Now, when we went through with these three restaurants, the Bungalow, Hotcakes, Pizza Kitchen, very different restaurants, very different kind of setups, very different kitchens. And as we went in, not in one of them, and not one time did we see anybody or film anybody that was sitting off in the corner waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. There was nobody who was kind of hanging back. Actually, no bystanders at all in the kitchen. And you know, that's what is really kind of fun about this, is what is happening in the King's Kitchen. If you're going to make the feast of the ages, you're not just going to whip together kind of grilled cheese and tomato soup. You're not just going to pull together some last-minute oatmeal before the kids run off to school. What is happening here is building the brunch, the magnificent feast of the ages. Think of your favorite brunch, whether it's the Bay Club or Cappy's, depending on where you are on the highway. That brunch that has all kind of different flavors and all kind of different options for you. That's what's going on in the King's Kitchen. It's a flurry of activity. See, there's something called the 80-20 rule that they use in nonprofits, and you hear it in church land too. It's kind of a crazy thing. It's 20% of the people that are connected to you give 80% of the time, resources, and energy. Only 20% of the 100 actually give to the mission, are part of the mission. The 80 kind of are the bystanders. If you went into a kitchen of one of these three restaurants, or any restaurant that you love and is good, you would not see the 80-20 rule in existence. You would not see 80% of the people back in that kitchen going, oh, that's cool, good, you're doing good stuff, way to go, thanks. Oh, here's a little help, oh. No, there's no such thing as the 80-20 rule in the kitchen. Because the 80-20 rule says, no, I'm just going to get a few people to do the work and then I'm going to go sit down and have the feast. That does not happen in the King's Kitchen, to prepare the feast of the ages at the chef's table. Because this is just this magnificent, diverse, wild, exciting, hugely extravagant meal that we're building and making. And there are no bystanders. I've been a part of churches like St. Andrew's, big churches, churches that are mid-sized, churches that are small, that are startups. Even when I was a child, our family didn't seem to be all that deeply tied in to going to church, but we did go to church every week because almost everybody did in those days. And there was one time when we were living actually in Kansas City, my dad working for IBM, and they got invited to be part of a new church plant. And I've never seen my parents so involved in church before or after that. And the idea that, man, we were there 2 or 3 times a week. It was an all hands on deck. It was, you're doing everything. Because when you have a small, new, exciting adventure, there's no such thing as the 80-20 rule. there's no bystanders. Once you build up, once you get your systems, once you get your staff, once you get kind of comfortable with the budget, it's a lot easier to kind of sit back and enjoy the meal. Maybe eat the same thing every time you come, sit in exactly the same place. Sound familiar? But that's not what happens at the Feast of the King, or especially the kitchen of the King. What happens is all hands are on deck. You know, the third thing is there is great joy in the kitchen. The most fun that I had when I got the chance with Brandon, our team of people doing the production, they've done such a great job. Thank them when you see them around, was how excited these restaurant owners were for us to be with them. It was like they were little kids at Christmas. We started with John at Hotcakes. Paul at Hotcakes. We started with him. We sat down. It's like he couldn't sit still. He was just so excited. And then when we went to John at the Pizza Bakery, so grateful, so glad, so proud of his association with St. Andrew's, so excited to tell the story of the people in his kitchen. And then we went over to be at Jim at the Bungalow, which is a much bigger operation there in CDM on the Coast Highway. And it's a fantastic restaurant. But Jim, same way, so proud, so excited, so joyful. But it wasn't just the owners. It wasn't just them. It was the people that came to serve that food. That's what we just saw. We asked, if you remember from the video this week, what meal are you really proud of? What are you really excited about? And man, with John Pizza Bakery started talking, well, my wife loves these things. We went somewhere to eat, just opened this restaurant, and these garlic knots. And when he started to talk about the garlic knots, his mouth watered. I just got swept up in it. But not only him, his team. So they went back and they got a whole bunch of these garlic knots and brought them down, then gave me a huge bag of garlic knots that lasted 5-7 minutes in my car. Because there was such joy. It wasn't the garlic knots, it was the joy. Boy, when Jim brought out that pumpkin, and those of you that know me, I'm more a 12 and under eater. I look, mature. But when it comes to eating, I'm really sort of limited in my way that I eat. But I'm telling you, when I saw the excitement on his eyes, and when the chef himself brought out that pumpkin pot pie and put it in front of me, and the look on his face, sheer joy. And then when we took the cameras back into the kitchen, the people serving, the people preparing, the people that said hi when I walked in and out, when all of us did, all the different servers, every single person, joy. There was no complaining. There was no slackers. There was no grumbling. They were proud of and committed to the mission of the table. They were helping each other. There's spontaneous dancing in one of the kitchens. That's the feast. This spontaneity of an expression of we get to be serving alongside the King, preparing the Feast of the Ages. That's who we are. That's who you are. I just want to remind you, that's what Paul's saying when he says, if you're a server, serve. If you're a prophesier, which actually means telling truth, not to predict the future. If you're a teacher, if you're a leader, if you're someone who helps, if you're an encourager, whatever it is your role. Again, these are not prescriptive. You got to figure out which one of these you are. If out of you exudes the joy of being with Christ in his kitchen, preparing the feast for his table, then whatever it is that you bring to the kitchen, just go for it. And that 80-20 rule, and the bigger the church, and way too often in American Christianity, we don't really think of it like the great blessing and gift of serving, the great gift of being in the kitchen. And you don't have to do anything extraordinary, because your very presence is what makes you extraordinary. Not to be a bystander, not to stand back and fold your arms, But be in the kitchen right now, today, and this week, and next week, and probably for several months. Our entire nation has to be completely rebuilt. Somehow with a unity and a kindness and a lack of incivility and a lack of so much division. So many people are so hurt, so separate, so beaten down, so frightened, so angry. Where's the church? Man, we gotta be working up that feast. We gotta be bringing hope. We gotta be joy. Because at St. Andrew's, you know that we're coming out of this COVID thing. How many months? We don't know, but we do know as we do more and more to kind of open our doors to a more public presence at St. Andrew's, we got to rebuild how we see ourselves. We are not the kind of kitchen where 80% of the folks sit on the sidelines and watch or go straight to the table. No, we're better than that. We're different than that. We follow the King. Every one of us, every one of you, come on into the kitchen. Put on that apron. Give yourself to the dance, to the joy, to the service, to the love, to the commitment to the mission of the King. I want to tell you about one person in our congregation. I can't wait to see this happen again. I don't know how many of you know Kay Zeller, but a lot of you have probably seen Kay Zeller. Her official capacity is a greeter, which is hysterical, because Kay is somewhere between, like me, 47 and 147, right in that little area. And Kay is considered by some, definitely not by her, as someone who's a little bit older. And Kay's got a lot of energy. But I want you to know what Kay's role in the kitchen is when she's on for greeting, she pulls up a big old chair, and it's a little hard for her, and people kind of help her. Right as you walk, before you go into the sanctuary, which is right into the corner cafe, Kay just kind of plops herself down, wearing the most unbelievable outfits that I've ever seen, not just in a church, but anywhere, except for maybe Venice and Hollywood. And there's Kay with this incredible outfit, this huge smile, this look in her eye that said, "Welcome to St. Andrew's." Kay just sits there, and her job is to offer up the joy of Christ and the feast to every person that would come, hungry, longing for peace and joy and reconciliation and hope. And there's good old Kay Zeller sitting there in that chair with that huge smile on her face. You have that same calling. Whatever it is. And if you don't know what it is, we got a lot of people, both our staff, our leadership, but just other friends. Be in a small group. Participate in the giving to the church. I think you probably know that we have a huge financial need to keep what we've been doing and what we're going to be doing going. So as we give, as we serve, as we find ourselves in that kitchen, may we find our place. Because you have the right stuff. The right stuff for St. Andrew's to be that new place that God uses to bring his feast to the table of the King. Welcome to the adventure.